I trusted my sister with everything, even my deepest secrets. But what she did next shattered my entire world. I caught her in the arms of the one person I never thought I'd lose. But just when I thought the betrayal couldn't cut deeper, the real truth came out, and it changed everything. I never thought the person who would destroy my marriage would be my own sister, the one I grew up with, the one I trusted with my secrets. But what she did, it didn't just ruin my marriage. It tore apart everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and family. And believe me, it only got worse from there. My name is Vanessa. I'm 34 years old, and I used to believe in fairy tales, love, loyalty, happily ever after. But I quickly learned that the closest people in your life can be the ones who hurt you the most. My husband, David, and I were high school sweethearts. We built everything together. A house, a life, and what I thought was an unbreakable bond. But then, she came back into my life. My sister, Marissa. Marissa had always been the wild one. Charming. Beautiful. Always needing to be the center of attention. We were close growing up, but adulthood pulled us in different directions. I stayed grounded. She floated through life. So when she called out of the blue, saying she needed a place to stay after her divorce, I didn't think twice. Of course, I'd help her. She was my sister. What could possibly go wrong? David wasn't thrilled at first. Just for a few weeks, he said. I nodded, reassuring him. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I didn't know I had just invited a storm into my home, one that would destroy everything in its path. At first, it was harmless. Small things. Marissa borrowing my clothes. Laughing at David's jokes just a little too long. Sitting too close on the couch. I noticed it. But I brushed it off. She was family. I was paranoid, right? Then the whispers started. It started with whispers, quiet murmurs from mutual friends, awkward pauses during conversations. A friend of mine, Jessica, asked casually one day, "So, how's it been, having Marissa around? Everything okay with David?" The way she said it made my stomach turn. I laughed it off at first, trying to seem unbothered. But something inside me twisted. The signs were there. The way Marissa always looked too put together in the mornings. Full makeup, perfect hair, just to lounge around the house. The late-night conversations I'd wake up to, murmuring and laughter downstairs. "We just lost track of time," David would say when I asked. "We were just catching up," Marissa added, too quickly. But I was married. I trusted him. I trusted her. I told myself I was being jealous, insecure, maybe even unfair. One night, I caught her wearing one of my robes, the satin one David bought me for our anniversary. When I walked in, she didn't even flinch. She smiled. "I didn't think you'd mind." I laughed nervously. "Maybe ask next time," I said, trying to keep things light. But deep down, something felt off. I felt like I was watching a slow-motion car crash, and I couldn't look away. And then came the moment that shattered it all. I remember the day it hit me, the day I realized that what I had been living wasn't the life I thought I knew. The pieces of the puzzle had never fit so perfectly, yet I had been too blind to see the bigger picture. There had been subtle signs before, moments of doubt, but I chose to ignore them. A part of me was afraid to acknowledge the truth. It would shatter everything. The whispers, the strange looks from my sister, the sudden distance between us. She had always been my best friend. The one person I trusted, and now I was questioning everything. Sitting in that quiet room, I could feel the weight of my heart sinking further with every passing minute. The more I thought about it, the more the reality set in. It wasn't just my husband who had betrayed me. It was my sister, my flesh and blood. I was caught in a storm of emotions. Disbelief, anger, and most of all, hurt. The person who was supposed to protect me had turned her back on me. It was a rainy Friday evening. I came home early from work, surprise early. My boss had given us a half day, and I thought I'd surprise David with takeout from his favorite Thai place. The house was oddly quiet when I stepped in. No TV, no music. Just the sound of the rain against the windows. I set the food on the kitchen counter and walked toward the living room, calling out, "David? Marissa?" No answer. I moved upstairs. The bedroom door, our bedroom, was halfway open. I pushed it gently. And there they were. Not talking. Not laughing. Not even pretending. In my bed. Together. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the world had suddenly turned into slow motion. My worst nightmare materialized right in front of my eyes. David jumped up, scrambling for an excuse. Marissa looked at me without a hint of guilt. Just calm. Like she had been waiting for this moment. "You were never enough for him," she said. That sentence cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt. My own sister. The person I trusted. The person I would have died for. And she did this. I ran. Out of the room. Out of the house. Into the rain, barefoot and shaking. That night, everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I had, crumbled. After that night, I didn't go home. I stayed with a friend, barely slept, barely ate. I was in a daze, replaying everything, trying to understand how we got here. The next day, I called my parents. I didn't even know what to say. How do you start a conversation like that? Mom, Dad, David and Marissa. I caught them together. My mother gasped. My father was silent for what felt like hours. Then came the storm of reactions. My mom cried, begging me to come home. My dad wanted to have a word with David. But what broke me even more was that not everyone believed me. Some family members, my own relatives, said I must have misunderstood. "Are you sure it wasn't just a one-time mistake? Maybe you were too distant from David?" Marissa wouldn't do that. "She's your sister." Those comments shattered what little was left of me. The betrayal wasn't just between David and Marissa anymore. It was between me and my family. The people who were supposed to stand by me. But the worst part. Marissa didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She told my parents she loved him. That she was meant to be with him. And David. He went along with it. They started showing up to family dinners. Together. I stopped going. I couldn't stomach it. The people who once made me feel safe now made me feel like a stranger. But I wasn't done yet. I thought the worst was behind me, that losing my husband to my sister was as bad as it could get. But life had one more cruel twist waiting for me. Weeks passed. I tried to focus on myself. Therapy, journaling, anything to process the pain. But there was something nagging at me. A detail I hadn't noticed before. One night, while sorting through old emails and messages, just trying to make sense of things, I stumbled on something odd. A saved draft. From David's email. Dated 6 months before the affair was exposed. It was a message to Marissa. "I don't know how much longer I can lie to her. Every time I come home to her face, it kills me a little more. I know we said we'd wait until the timing was right, but I'm done pretending. I want to be with you. I always have." 6 months ago. 6 months before I found out. That meant the affair wasn't a recent slip-up. It had been going on for over a year. Planned, calculated, hidden beneath my nose while I thought I was building a life with someone who loved me. And then it hit me, all those sudden late meetings, the phone calls he'd take outside, the coldness that crept in slowly. It all made sense. But it wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about deception, manipulation, and being played by the two people I trusted most in the world. That night, I cried harder than I ever had. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted him back. But because I realized I had spent years loving someone who never truly existed. A lie wrapped in warm smiles and empty promises. And Marissa, my sister, my childhood best friend? She wasn't who I thought she was either. But I was done being the victim. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes, a sore heart, and something else I hadn't felt in weeks: resolve. I was done living in the shadows of their betrayal. I was done letting their lies define me. It was time to reclaim my story, my strength, my life. So I made a list. Not of revenge. Not of ways to expose them. But a list of everything I had forgotten about myself. All the dreams I had put on hold while playing the perfect wife. All the sacrifices I had made to make others happy while quietly silencing my own voice. All the goals I used to have before my life became about keeping a marriage alive that was already rotting at the core. I enrolled in a class I'd been talking about for years. Graphic design. It had nothing to do with my job or my ex, but it was mine. I started going for walks without my phone, rediscovering the peace in my own company. I even booked a solo trip, something I never had the courage to do before. Every small step felt like a rebellion against the pain they left me with. But something strange started happening. People around me began to notice. My energy shifted. Friends who hadn't checked in for months reached out again. Even my mother, who had initially defended Marissa, called to say, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. And I miss my daughter." Their betrayal had once shattered me. But now, it was shaping me. It had been 6 months since I last spoke to either Marissa or David. 6 months since I blocked them, erased our shared photos, stopped checking their socials, and let them become ghosts in my past. And honestly, it was the best 6 months I'd had in years. I was healing, growing, and finally, breathing. But betrayal has a funny way of circling back, especially when the people who betrayed you begin to regret it. One rainy afternoon, I was walking home from my design class when I saw a familiar car parked near my apartment building. David. He stepped out before I could turn around. "Please, just hear me out," he said, voice trembling like a man who'd finally lost everything. "Marissa and it didn't work out. It was a mistake." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. A few days later, I got a message from Marissa. A long-winded, overly emotional email filled with apologies, childhood trauma excuses, and this line: "I lost my sister for a man who didn't even stay." And for the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt nothing. No anger. No heartbreak. Just clarity. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because they were miserable without me. But I had already made peace with the past. I didn't need closure from people who opened the door to betrayal and slammed it in my face. I had closed it myself. The day David and Marissa tried to re-enter my life was the day I realized something profound. I was no longer the same person. The girl who cried herself to sleep, the girl who felt broken, betrayed, and crushed by the people she loved, she was gone. In her place stood a woman who had rebuilt herself, piece by piece, with strength, resilience, and a newfound sense of self-worth. The truth was, their attempt to make amends wasn't about us anymore. It was about their own unresolved issues, their guilt, and their need for validation. And I wasn't going to allow their mess to cloud my peace anymore. This was my time. I had taken back control of my life, my happiness, and my boundaries. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go for your own peace, not for someone else's sake. I decided not to respond, not to engage. I simply moved forward with my life, surrounded by people who truly valued me, who never played with my heart, and who were never selfish enough to betray my trust. In the months that followed, I threw myself into everything I had neglected while I was lost in the chaos of betrayal. I found new passions, reconnected with old friends, and focused on my career. I made new memories and forged new relationships that were grounded in honesty, love, and respect. I also started therapy, something I wish I'd done earlier. It helped me unpack the weight of all those years of emotional damage and taught me how to create healthy boundaries moving forward. I learned that sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones that shape us into the strongest versions of ourselves. But perhaps the biggest change came from within me. I was no longer the woman who allowed people to walk all over her. I wasn't the woman who second-guessed herself or let others' actions define her. I became the woman who trusted her intuition, her strength, and her ability to move on from even the darkest of moments. As I look back on everything, the pain of losing my sister and my husband was real. But the most powerful lesson came from understanding that betrayal doesn't define me, it refines me. To anyone out there who has gone through a similar situation, who's been betrayed by the people they loved, who feels broken, or who's questioning their worth because of someone else's actions, I want you to know this. You are enough. You don't need validation from anyone. You have the power to heal, to rise above, and to create a life where you are treated with the respect and love you deserve. And most importantly, never let anyone steal your peace for their own sake. This was my story. It's raw. It's real. It's painful. But through it, I found my strength, my voice, and my true self. I hope this story resonates with you, that it offers you hope, and that it helps you realize that you too can rise from betrayal and emerge stronger than ever. If you've experienced something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments. Let's create a space where we can support and uplift each other through the tough times. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you think this story could help someone else. And be sure to check out my other videos on emotional healing and personal growth. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and remember, you are never alone.